Welcome to Creative Tian channel. Today we have a shopping guide for machine knitters. If you are a new machine knitter, you probably want to know what's the basic tools and equipment you need to start a successful machine knitting project. I will separate this video into several parts. The first part is about different machine choices, and the second part is about the tools and equipment. The third part is about the yarns. The fourth part is about learning and resources. First, which knitting machine should I buy? I like the Japanese style flatbed knitting machine. There is also a circular knitting machine type. You can make a circular tube knitting easily. One famous brand is the RD or the RD Express, and it comes with different sizes, depends on what project you want to make. My advice is not to buy the cheap Chinese imports. They are usually made of plastic and they don't last very long. Now back to the Japanese style flatbed knitting machine. This is the type of knitting machine I use most. Basically, there are three types: the standard gauge, the mid gauge, and the bulky gauge. The mid gauge is usually plastic bed, such as LK150 or the Brother KX350. Both are pretty similar in gauge. It's between the standard gauge, which is 4.5 millimeter, or the bulky gauge. It's about 9 millimeter. So the mid-gauge machine is user-friendly. It's probably the best choice for your first machine. And the LK150 is still available new, so you can find accessories or replacement parts easily. But if you want to go with cheaper machine, you can find Brother KX350 or 390. The gauge is slightly bigger than LK150, but otherwise it's pretty similar. And because it's secondhand, it will be cheaper if you can find them on eBay or local thrift store. And we will talk about the metal bed. Basically, there are two big companies, Brother and Singer or Silver Reed. The most popular one is probably standard gauge knitting machine. Most of the machine can have a rebar attachment. With a rebar, you can do circular knitting and also knit different types of ribbon, such as 1x1 or 1x2 ribbon. Some machine comes with a punch card device, so you can insert a punch card and knit pattern quickly. Some new machine will have computer patterning ability. It's up to you if you like the computer machine. It will be more expensive, but you can have more choices about the patterning ability. And it's not just limited to a 24-stitch punch card. To me, I like the old-fashioned way of punch card, and I can punch out my card easily. And I don't have to worry about any computer or technical issues. So which machine should you pick? It really depends on what type of project you need the most, because the standard gauge only accepts thinner yarns such as lace weight, fingering weight, or the sock yarn, and some sports weight yarn. It cannot handle bigger yarn such as worsted or even DK. And the bulky gauge machine such as Brother 260 can handle bigger yarn such as worsted or DK. And the mid-gauge plastic machine is usually in between. It can handle DK and maybe some light worsted yarn. So it's actually very practical and a good choice if you come from hand knitting, and you can use most hand knitting yarn on the mid-gauge machine. Most of the machines are available on eBay. Most of them are second-hand, except the LK150. You can still find a new knitting machine that's similar to the Brother or Singer, but it's made in China. I believe they are called Artisan. So you do have choice there, but I think they get a little bit expensive and you'll be different quality. Many machine knitters have several machines because you need different gauges for different projects. But I still like the mid-gauge LK150 because it's very lightweight and portable. You can put it away easily, not like the heavy metal bed machine. You need to set them up properly and it takes a lot of space. The next part I want to talk about the tools and equipment. You don't really need all of this, but it's nice to have. The first one is a yarn winder and yarn swift. If you buy regular hand knitting yarn, it's much better to wind it into a cake or a cone for machine knitting. There are many choices in the market. I will link some of them in the description box below. It's much easier if you can wind them to a cake or a cone for machine knitting, especially for beginners. It saves a lot of frustration. Another one to consider is the machine knitting stand. You can set up your knitting machine on many different tables, but it will be nice to have a sturdy, dedicated metal stand just for the knitting machine, so it doesn't rattle easily, and you can adjust the angle if you have a knitter and a ribber. It will be very helpful. Another thing to consider when buying your knitting machine table is the thickness of the table. You have to consider the clamp. There's a certain height. If it's too thick, it's hard to keep the knitting machine secure. Another tool that's helpful is a yarn holder. You don't really need it, but it's nice to have. This is useful for either hand knitting or machine knitting. So it holds the yarn in place and spin when you pull the yarn. That can prevent the yarn from running all over the floor. The third part we want to talk about yarns. There are some cone yarns you can buy for machine knitting, but it's usually harder to find and the shipping time will take a while. It tends to be more expensive than hand knitting yarn. For me personally, most of the time I just use hand knitting yarns. And here are some of my go-to yarns. For machine knitting, you just need to wind them into cakes first. And try to avoid very stiff yarns such as cotton or linen. Here are some brands I like. It's not in any particular order. The first one is Cascade 220. You probably need to buy it online. They have different variations of the 220. They have the DK weight or sports weight, and they have the super wash version. So you have a lot of choices here. And I really like their colors. They have so many colors you can pick. And their price is reasonable too. The second brand is the Barocco. I like their vintage yarn. And again, they have worsted weight, DK weight. Their fiber is mixed with acrylic, so the price is cheaper, but the quality is still pretty decent. And because it's machine washable, so it's good for children's items or big blankets when you don't want to do hand washing. And Barocco also have socks yarn, such as socks SOX. They seems pretty decent too. Next of my favorite brands is Cloudbone. They are very soft and good price, but I think they are being discontinued. You can probably still find them online with discounted price. And for socks yarn, besides the Barocco yarn, I like the Cascade Heritage yarn. Another good brand is Regia. And I also use the Croy socks yarn a lot. because those are easily available at many craft stores. The last part I want to talk about is resource and learning. There will be some learning curves for machine knitting. To learn machine knitting, the best is probably to have some tutor locally, but most of the time it's not available, so you can learn it through videos. And YouTube is always a good choice because it's free and you can search specifically for any level or questions. I would suggest video classes such as Craftsy or DVDs by Diana Sullivan. And if you need to discuss or ask questions, I highly suggest Facebook groups. There are many machine knitting groups. Some are for beginners. Some are very specific for just one type of knitting machine. And some might be for color work. So you can search Facebook and join some of the groups for discussion. There are so many experienced machine knitter there. You can usually find your answer. So those are my suggestions for beginning machine knitters. I hope you find it useful and enjoy your machine knitting journey. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.